In this video, we're going to go over how to utilize machine guns, aka MGs, in Company of Heroes 3. First, let's talk about the role of an MG. It's a support unit and a suppression platform, so used properly, it can prevent multiple squads from attacking, or at least one squad of much higher value than the MG from attacking, via suppression. When you're bringing your MG onto the field, you want to try to use a triangle formation whenever you can, so that you have units on both wings of the MG spotting for it. You want to make sure you're always putting your MG in green cover whenever possible. Yellow cover can also be utilized at the start of a match, but once explosives and tanks start coming out, anything with area of effect damage, it can sometimes actually be detrimental to use yellow cover, so that'll depend on what you're facing. You need to make sure you put your machine guns in areas where they have good line of sight. If you set it up in such a way where a lot of its firing arc is blocked by a shot blocker, or a structure or something else it can't see and shoot through, it can cause problems. Generally, you're going to want your machine gun in the middle of the map. Most of the time, dominating the middle means you dictate the flow of the game, and so that's where your MG should be. Make sure you're moving your MG forward when you're pushing, and make sure you move it back if you're starting to lose the fight, so you can keep it on the field, if possible. It's important to make sure you're actively microing what your machine gun's targeting whenever possible. You can use the attack move command and click on a specific squad for your MG to target that squad. And what that allows you to do is suppress a squad that's currently unsuppressed. Try to avoid right-clicking when you do this because that can end up with an inadvertent pack-up command, so something to avoid. When you're moving your MG into a new area, try to use an attack move and then Shift-Q a setup command. So you give the attack move order, then you hold Shift, and then you give a setup command. And the reason we do this is that if you encounter a squad on your way to setting up, your MG will set up and attack that squad rather than simply walking past. One good trick you can use if you're capturing a point with an MG is to either pack it up early or leave it unpacked. This is to avoid waiting until the point is capped and then packing up, costing you extra seconds. However, if you're leaving it unpacked, make sure you're actively microing it, as an unmicroed MG that's unpacked will set up and target a squad automatically. One trick you might not know about is that you can actually manually set a facing of an MG in a building. You do this by selecting the MG and then do a drag face command the direction you want the MG to face. Now keep in mind that it won't change targets automatically or switch sides if you do this, so you'll need to make sure you're certain about which direction you want the MG facing, or else be ready to micro it yourself later. When you're playing against mortars, you're going to need to move your MG basically as soon as it gets targeted, or as soon as it even gets spotted if you know it's going to be barraged immediately. The other option is to move MGs to the flanks once your opponent starts using a mortar. A great way to keep machine guns safe is to mine the flanks of the MGs, and what this does is it allows you to leave one side of the MG essentially unguarded, and a squad that will hit it will be suppressed and it will give you plenty of time to react. Now that we've talked about what we should do with MGs, let's talk about what not to do. Don't leave it alone with nothing spotting for it. The exception to this is if it's very far back, if it's guarding a key point or a flank, and it can also depend on how risk-averse you are. If you want to risk leaving an MG on a flank to protect a VP, you can, but you run the risk of losing it, of course. Don't leave it in the same spot after it forces a squad off. You want to make sure you move it every time so that when your opponent returns, they don't know where the MG is. Don't leave it in one place all game. It's always better to have your units doing something as much as possible.
I'm so lonely, so lonely.
Don't leave it out of green cover if green cover is available. The amount of damage that green cover blocks is incredibly significant. So let's review some of the key things to do here. In a nutshell, scout and spot for your MG, reposition your MG as needed, and be thoughtful about where you position your MG. Hope this was helpful, and see you next time.